Final Fantasy XIV has seemingly done the impossible. It has unseated World of Warcraft as the go-to MMO for millions upon millions of players. When we started this new journey with the channel, I gave Eorzea one more try, basically as an investigation. I was not very excited to play this game. But good old Kyle, he was just so fascinated by the game's ascent to the top of the MMO charts almost 8 years after its major relaunch as A Realm Reborn. Every time we got together to talk about the latest stories and trends in gaming, Kyle would go on and on about how Final Fantasy XIV was essentially doing everything right, while WoW was just, let's say, not landing for a sizable chunk of the player base. Choosing to chronicle my first honest try of Final Fantasy XIV has quickly become one of the most rewarding gaming and content creation experiences of my life. Hundreds of comments each week from members of the Final Fantasy XIV community that are just legitimately stoked and excited to help guide my experience. I was sitting here thinking about this going into this video, and I thought that it was something I had not experienced before. But then I realized this reminds me of the late 90s. I'm in my 30s now. I'm as millennial as it gets. Between 1996 and 1999, the golden age of Nintendo was just washing over my elementary school. Ocarina of Time and Pokemon Blue and Red. It's all anyone wanted to talk about. And my friends and I, we would huddle around the lunch table and share our experiences with the excitement that only far too much corn syrup and caffeine could produce. And we just sit there and we'd share tales of how to beat bosses and how to find rare items like the big Goron sword, or wild shit like finding Masigno for the first time. It was my first truly communal gaming experience. And I don't look back too often. I like being an adult, but I miss that lunch table. I miss going through an experience with my friends together. And Final Fantasy XIV has given me that feeling back. So if you want to have this experience, everything we're about to talk about and everything we've covered so far on this channel is part of the free trial. Well, Kyle, we made it through Final Fantasy XIV's free trial.
We defeated Heavensward.
This is a lot of content. Is embarrassment of riches overused?
Is this what happens when you don't nullify your own game every expansion?
Well, I'm supposed to be the grumpy one. I feel like not only has playing through Final Fantasy XIV together given you a fun gaming experience, I feel like it has awakened some deep-seated World of Warcraft gripes that you haven't known how to put into words until now.
Well, yeah, because you don't have the comparison to make. You don't know any life better than the one you have. The grass is only greener when you can see the grass.
That's an interesting point. Hadn't thought about it like that. But you're not wrong. Certainly been my experience as well. But boy, man, like what an experience. There is a lot here. I reached a point personally where I just had to know what happened next.
We became enamored with the story. We had to see what was going to happen, so we streamed a lot recently. Subscribe to follow those streams. And what we're going to talk about today is the main plot alone, and its many B plots and C plots. This doesn't account for crafting, raiding, bonus dungeons. There is an insane amount of content, and when you look back at the release schedule of this game, it is so clean. It is regular, and it's not just one aspect of the game that gets updated. Yeah, the MSQ continues, which is the point of this video. But there are constantly other updates, and looking in the background right now to what the live modern game is doing, there are even more quality of life updates.
It's, again, and I've said this before, I am left with this excitement to be a current player while still really enjoying getting to slowly take my time through this and smell the roses. Or smell the massive pile of bodies that summon a evil god.
Yeah, let's smell it.
Listen, I know sometimes we go in order. I can't do it today, man. I can't do it. I was so impressed with the full arc of Heavensward. I think it is arguably the best expansion I've ever experienced in an MMO. From a narrative aspect. I would have liked a little more combat along the way. But from a narrative aspect, it is chef's kiss. It is absolutely wonderful. And we got to the end of 3.3, and I was just like, all right, cool. Bring on the intro to Stormblood. I'm sure nothing all that interesting will happen. And holy crap, they brought back Ilberd, and we saw one of the darkest, most metal things I've ever experienced in a game.
T for teen, by the way. Everyone likes to say PS3 graphics, by the way. No. T for teen, by the way. This is insanely dark and well-earned. It is a culmination of everything they've taught us so far about primals. We meet Gabu, a little goblin.
Oh,
He's
God.
having a tough time.
Are you trying to make me cry minutes into this video?
Final Fantasy XIV's trying to make you cry all the time. I'm just recapping the tears that it brought.
Dude, Gabu destroyed me. Gabu might be second place to Harshafat. I don't know if you know this about me. In this house, we love weird little creepy monsters. We love that gray area between ugly and cute. We have so much Gremlins memorabilia in this home, and we are the parents of 3 very funky looking chihuahuas. Gabu ended my soul. I'm going to carry Gabu with me for the rest of my life, and I blame you, Final Fantasy XIV. I hold you accountable.
And this metal evolution makes perfect sense. Moonbrea, Louisoix, they gave themselves unto the ether so they could cast spells or empower spells. So clearly the body's full of magic. Well, why wouldn't a person taken against their will also be full of magic? Well, enter the Titan Summoning Part 2, where the kobolds, fervent to resummon their great father, use dead bodies. And you're like, wow, that's really dark.
It has so much more weight than it should. It's like these are the monster races. These should be your throwaway trash mobs that a quest giver's like, go give me 20 kobold ears. And Final Fantasy XIV is like, no. You're going to go get those ears, and you're going to hate yourself for it.
It's insane. The entire fight, Titan, empowered by the despair of a child, is screaming for his parents. And so, when Ilberd is defeated on the top of the wall and decides to give forth all of himself, plus the 2 eyes of Nidhogg, to summon another calamity upon the world, we know exactly how this happened.
Yeah, and it was from, in the grand scheme of things, a smaller story beat, but one that really stuck with me because of the weight of what happened to this brand new little, I would say in most games, would have been a throwaway character. The way they wrote it, it made me pay attention, and it made me retain that information. So you're absolutely right. When we gaze upon this field of fallen soldiers and Ilberd yeets himself off a cliff while smiling. By the way, that shot coming across Ilberd's dead face with the rest of the bodies, it really is one of the darkest things I've seen in a game. And it's a game that so frequently is so uplifting and so positive. In the fact that it's a good counter, and it makes the triumph and the heroic moments really stand out by comparison. Can you tell I liked this? I felt satisfied. I really wanted to kick Ilberd's ass. I really did. And so to have the reveal of Griffin is Ilberd happen at the end of the dungeon, and you go like whoop up on him, that was just so satisfying for me. I was like, thank you, game. Thank you for giving me what I've been wanting. And honestly, at this point, had forgotten about.
This was steeped in politics, which it can be really, really thick, and it got back into like crystal crates, which was the toughest part of A Realm Reborn for me, but it was held by the through line of the Griffin. The Griffin is extremely charismatic. The line delivery for his speeches, though they may be a double, is amazing and enthralling.
Yeah, really good voice acting. And I'm with you on some of the setup lost me. Basically, every time the Seed Seer was on screen, I just kind of mentally took a vacation. But that being said, having seen what they did with Papalymo and Yda, in conjunction with Ilberd, makes me just assume that the Seed Seer is about to become the deepest, most fleshed out character in the history of video game writing. You started in the Ul'dah starting zone, and I started in the Limsa starting zone. Neither of us have started in the Shroud, which means neither of us started the game alongside Yda and Papalymo. Up until this point in the story, they seemed like the least fleshed out characters. Yda seemed kind of like a dunce, vapid. In our stream, I was doing a Valley Girl voice for Yda, because really all she did was say things that Papalymo would then correct, which then, to me, Papalymo just lived in my mind as the dude that's really mean to Yda. Like, that was it. Yda was kind of a dunce, Papalymo was kind of mean, and that's where they resided in my brain. And yet at the end of this, I love both these characters. I do feel a little part of me wish Papalymo was brought back a little bit earlier, because he like shows up and immediately is altruistic as hell. I was just like, oh, there's more to Papalymo. I wish I kind of saw the side of him more. I really liked Yda's arc, because suddenly she gets real fleshed out. This massive climax at the end of Baelsar's Wall, where Ilberd's now lifeless corpse with eyes in tow summon Shinryu, which they do a great job of obscuring, right? Because the primal itself gets this grand reveal later on in the story, and we really focus on Papalymo and Papalymo's sacrifice, a la doing his best Louisoix impression, summoning the good old, the Louisoix patented containment ball. Kyle, I'm curious, how did Papalymo's death land for you?
I don't know if he's dead or not.
Okay, that's my answer. They didn't show him die.
We ran coils, so we're all up on it here. Louisoix became the Phoenix because he was not only sacrificing himself to cast the spell, he was also empowered by everyone hoping that he could sacrifice himself to complete the spell. So he became a primal in that way, and like a badass shot straight through Bahamut.
He was a collateral primal?
Yeah, like an incidental primal. Papalymo, we were all like cheering for him, but he was more of the Moonbrea give yourself unto the ether kind of casting in that way. That doesn't mean that his ghost or etheric spirit isn't going to be lingering in the area around the battle, but we just got to know him. And clearly, by looking at Yda's evolution and her prevalence in the Stormblood trailer, we're going to spend a lot of time getting to know Yda. Maybe she shines and flies so well that she's going to carry that storyline and that regret or emotion of Papalymo for us for a time. But it just seems underutilized.
To a certain degree, right? Like the characters, post the containment of Shinryu just operate as if Papalymo died, as if we just watched Papalymo die, which makes sense because you know how that spell works, because it is what killed Louisoix. So all that, I'm not saying that the game doesn't do a good job of teaching us the rules of that spell and understanding the outcome, the stakes. It's just if you're gonna kill a main character, like, show them dying. So far, Final Fantasy XIV has not moved in mysterious ways. If it omits something, it tends to omit it for a reason, because later on, it's gonna sideline you with a big old surprise or return. So that I'm with you. I'm like, is Papalymo really dead? Or I think they could kind of ride the middle line here, where we operate as if he's dead, and he is dead, but we're going to have like a lingering spirit, and actually at some point later on in Stormblood, come to, face to face with that and see a proper Yda, or should I say Lys, and Papalymo goodbye.
In terms of the way this released, I'm extremely impressed. There was a 2-month gap in between Baelsar's Wall and the Omega storyline and the return of Nero.
Let's just call it the Nero storyline, because let's be honest, he kind of stole the end of Heavensward, which is really just a prologue to Stormblood, but I digress.
And 3 months later, you get Stormblood. Like, that is one heck of a production cycle. That is amazing. Very little lingering, and that story's hitting hard. And Shinryu is really cool. Another big dragon, but very different than the ones we've seen so far. My question, though, is he empowered by the eyes of Nidhogg? Those things came back. They were supposed to be in an etheric storm, and they're right back at us. Granted, Final Fantasy has not been cheap so far.
We had already gone through a serious arc with the eyes and had big ramifications in that. Like, they essentially resurrected Nidhogg and all this stuff. I'm fine with them being like a power source, a catalyst for Ilberd's means. And it reminds us of Elidibus and all that stuff, right? Like, he kind of shows back up and you're like, oh, Ilberd. At the time, we thought Griffin, he's in league with Elidibus. Oh, there's the eyes. They did kind of take a back seat to the bigger things here, which is like how this, like, it's the death of the character of Ilberd, the death question marks of Papalymo, and leading to the revelation of who Yda truly is.
And I love hanging out with Nero. I love all the Allegan tech. Omega's battle with Shinryu was bombastic and cool, and just, they wanted to make a kaiju battle, and they did. And then they said, but no one saw it, so who knows what happened, even though we as the viewers, the audience, got to enjoy the fight, and they just left it lingering. A huge bit of Stormblood to tease you on the breadcrumb trail, the primal trail that you're excited to follow. Perhaps densely sandwiched between politics.
It's a really good setup for the next expansion. And at the moment, the only thing I really have to compare it to is A Realm Reborn, which I think was a good setup as well. But there's something, this was so much more bombastic and climactic and bigger than us. Because we're watching this primal that's kind of on this scale of which that we haven't really seen if you run coils. If you don't run coils, this is really kind of the biggest, baddest primal we've seen so far. This is more effective to me than the end of A Realm Reborn, which I really liked. I think that the tee-up for Heavensward is really strong, but Papalymo's sacrifice into Shinryu breaking out and the Omega fight and them crash landing and Nero's involvement, all the while Yda is Lys, and Lys is an interesting, fleshed out character. It's additive in such an exciting way that I'm sitting here knowing that for a lot of people, Stormblood is not their favorite expansion. I'm very ready to go into it. And it comes back around to, I think, just how strong Final Fantasy's closing of chapters is. Because I know I'm going to miss Heavensward. You know what I'm going to miss the most? I'm going to miss that damn organ music on Quest Complete.
Yeah, the Quest Complete music isn't as strong now that we've crested into Stormblood.
No, definitely not. Whatever. But at the same time, I feel content and done with that arc. It feels complete to me. And again, I'm at this moment where I cannot wait to see what's next. I know it's Stormblood. I know a lot of folks consider it not the strongest expansion. This lead-in is really strong and really exciting. And I don't know where it's going to go. And that's really exciting for me.
The tee-up is just ironclad. Lys discovering herself. In the trailer, we kind of get this feeling of like her sharing her power, her knowledge, and we grow together. The feeling of the Warrior of Light, us reaching these heights of power to send out shockwaves with our punches from atop statues. It's a great structure for our advancement, and it showcases what kind of villains we're going to be facing going forward, such as our new mysterious villain, person in a chair that smiles.
Wicked armor set in a chair that smiles?
They look very Warframe, as the past Garleans have. I love their introduction with the frazzled guard.
Let's get into what really feels like the B plot of all this, which is not to say it's not important, because it's like multiverse space lore.
Well, and that's not all of the advertisement. It's the fries next to the cheeseburger. Some people eat their fries first. Some people really, really like those fries. Some people are so insane as to put chicken inside the fries. The Warrior of Darkness storyline is very strong and builds on what is ultimately our, I assume, end goal, the Zodiark storyline. Light versus dark.
When the pigtails come out, you know we're about to have to think really hard. And maybe hear, and maybe feel.
And I mean, Oriange's there, so of course it's going to be a little dense. But suffice to say, the Warriors of Darkness continue their plot to usher in another calamity by making beastmen and others summon as many big bad primals as they can. But eventually it seems that they decide, you know what, killing the Warrior of Light is a pretty good idea too. And we are faced with an extremely awesome moment where Alize summons a amazing sword of etheric light, but it's housed inside maybe one of my least favorite moments in this game.
Oh, the solo trials. Yeah, and that one to me was particularly weird because there was really important information down in the chat box.
Yeah, unvoiced.
I don't know about you. I have my text very small because it's just to chat with my friends. Whatever the case is, the payoff was still, as so many things have been, more than I expected. Because up to this point, I was just calling the main one that has like the Derplander model, the Warrior of Dickness, because he just shows up, talks a bunch of smack, and then leaves. Final Fantasy XIV has this way of making you think something is one thing and then having a big reveal and be like, no, it goes deeper than that. And what happens here with the Warriors of Darkness is they become sympathetic characters.
They have been through a lot. I'm not sure Hydaelyn is a good person or a good crystal. It kind of seemed like she ignored them and left their world to bathe in the light and be destroyed. And then it's like, oh, you know what? I guess I kind of did wrong. Let me go visit your world. You want to come with? Which means they died again. They're dead. They're already dead, empowered by Ascians to go invade the source, which is us, by the way. We learned that they're from the first world. There are many worlds, but they're from the first one, which was consumed by light, and we are on the source. We are primary world.
Yes, and there appears to be a very, to me, Star Warsian balance of light and dark, and too much of one or the other is a bad thing. Because what we're seeing here is the result of too much light, is my vibe. I am still foggy as hell as to the finer points of all of this.
And the Word of the Mother says she's going to visit their world and absorb that light onto herself, which doesn't sound like a healthy practice, like that light maybe should bask on other worlds, perhaps. So only time will tell the nuanced moments of this exchange.
Yeah. I respond much more to character focus rather than plot focus. And for me, my big takeaway from all of this is that I was really glad that Minfilia can still manifest when we're talking with Hydaelyn. Because she addresses Oriange as Minfilia.
Wait a minute. Does this mean she just exploded for dramatic effect?
I think it means they're like one and the same. And that Minfilia isn't entirely lost to us, but she is in terms of her physical presence in Eorzea. I'm not even sure how important that is to the grander scheme of things, but to me, I like that it's not just essentially a deity taking the form of someone that we know and love for the sake of being like that damn movie Contact.
Yeah, no, this isn't Contact. This is X-Men Phoenix, and X-Men Phoenix is far superior.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, I'm very into it. And as someone who, much like Papalymo, didn't really like Minfilia until her grand sacrifice, I'm glad that we still get to, every once in a while, visit Minfilia. And who knows, that might be a way we get to visit Papalymo. Before we wrap up here, we need to talk about the single greatest thing to happen in 3.4 through the beginning of Stormblood. We finally got our dinner with Sir McHandsome.
The pinnacle of lore here. The culmination of our adventures led to a delightful evening.
I live for this kind of stuff.
This is peak video gaming, as cheesy as it is, like getting to see your character model hanging out with characters you love in just casual settings, Mass Effect Citadel, and it was great. It was quickly interrupted by the plot, mind you, but Alizé showed up, and that was a welcome character to come back into the fold.
It is a lovely blend between the end of Heavensward and what is legitimately the beginning of Stormblood. You actually get to take your rest. You get to take a moment and celebrate the fact that you're still standing with Aymeric, a character that you've been through the ringer with, which is, I think, why it doesn't feel like fan service. Like, there's part of this, I think there's a different version of this, a less well-written version of this that feels that way. That feels like, my character is the coolest, and it gets to hang out with the other cool characters. But much like so much of what we talked about here, it does feel earned, because throughout all of Heavensward, you and Aymeric have faced multiple dragons, literally been stabbed, quelled multiple uprisings. You have been through hell and back together. And so, of course, you'd want to sit down and, well, refuse a bottle of wine because it might include sleeping poison.
Now, I understand the chat during our live stream was very convinced that this was both Aymeric and the Warrior of Light concerned about possible assassinations or something along that line. I choose to believe that we were both so pleasantly sauced and having such a wonderful time, we wouldn't possibly overtip that mark.
Maybe, yeah. We have our wits about us in our moment of relaxation. Could be either way. I'm fine with either. However you want to read into that, I'm okay with it. But it was a nice little epilogue to Heavensward, as was our check-in with Amonelane, if for no other reason than just like one more little, hey, remember Hashafant? Here's a beautiful oil painting of him hanging above this desk. Don't you want one for your house that you don't have yet?
I'm ready to head into Stormblood. I've heard so many mixed things, so many great things about the dungeon design and the trials and raids kind of take a jump up, which we've certainly talked about being our favorite content. I love the new characters they've introduced. Like Gotsetsu has such an amazing arrival on the scene, just a joyous character while everything's kind of falling apart and dark around him. It's a great balance.
He's a nice garnish. He pairs well with the darkness that we're living through at this stage in the story.
We literally brought Yagiri back out of the shadows to be now in the trailer itself. There's a big hole in a mountain, which is so anime I love, and I can't wait to see what happens. My only trepidation is that I walk in the room with Raban in front of a war table, and it gives me World of Warcraft flashbacks.
I don't like war tables, but it doesn't look like it's some type of repeatable content. But we already basically send followers out with our retainers, so I think we're safe.
And Yda is now poised to be a huge part of this next story, and with so many characters well established in the background, Kryl joining full time, Alphino wanting everybody to work independently, but Ishtola totally being the mom of the room. It's going to be fabulous. It depends how much thick politics we're going to have to wade into until we get to the primal goodness, the gooey primal center.
I want to end this video by saying, by getting into a recommendation of the Final Fantasy XIV free trial, but it just seems absurd at this point in our journey with this channel. This channel, the last 5, almost 6 months, that's our endorsement of the Final Fantasy XIV free trial. It's rich enough to cover almost half a year of making YouTube videos and streaming while just getting through the free trial. That's how much content it gave us. And granted, we took our time, but also there was a lot of content we haven't completed yet. We're going to be finishing up the Alexander raids. We're looking at the optional dungeons and trials that we haven't gotten to, hard modes. There's still so much here that's still under that umbrella of free trial that there's a reason it's memified, because there is so much here. And if you like MMOs, I don't know how you wouldn't give it a shot. On that, I guess, glowing endorsement, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. I can't wait to see you all for our next stream. And make sure you follow us on Twitter for go live notifications. Kyle's at Kyle Ferguson. I'm at Garrett Art. And until next time, GG.